What if I told you that your greatest enemy has never lived outside of you? What if the real war was never against the world, but against the voice inside your own mind? Think about it. How many times have you ruined an opportunity because your ego whispered, "You already know enough. You're already good enough"? How many victories slipped from your hands simply because pride blinded you at the final step? Imagine it. A force that can lift you to greatness or quietly destroy everything you've built. A voice that feels sweet, yet poisons your judgment. A shadow that has crushed heroes and turned ordinary people away from the lives they were meant to live. This book, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, is not just a message. It is a battlefield map, a guide to the silent war you fight every day, a war where losing means surrendering your potential, and winning means unlocking a version of yourself you've never met before. Today, we step into that shadow. Today, we face the truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Are you ready? Because in this journey, you will witness your greatest enemy and your ultimate freedom. Now, let's begin the audiobook. If you are ready, let me open the very first page of this journey. Chapter 1. The Enemy Within. There comes a moment in every person's life when they pause. Sometimes in the middle of a lonely night, sometimes at the peak of success, sometimes in the ruins of a failure so heavy it leaves your chest hollow. And in that silence, a question rises. Why do I keep sabotaging myself? Most people never answer it. Some never dare to even ask it. But you, right now, are stepping into that question with open eyes. This chapter is about the enemy you carry within, the one that hides behind your confidence, whispers through your ambitions, and silently pulls the strings behind the scenes. This enemy has no face, no form, no shape, yet it influences every decision, every reaction, every dream, every downfall. It is your ego. Now, ego is not the loud bragging people assume. It isn't just arrogance or pride or showing off. Ego is quieter, more subtle, more dangerous. It is that invisible layer of self-deception that convinces you, I already know enough. I'm already good enough. I don't need help. I don't need guidance. I don't need correction. I don't need to improve. Ego is the voice that makes us believe we are invincible, right until the moment we crash. But let's slow down. Let's peel back the layers, gently, one by one. The silent saboteur. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast desert. The sun is ruthless, the wind unforgiving. Every step requires clarity. But ego places fog over your vision. It whispers, you know the way, even when you've never set foot on this terrain. And people follow that whisper. Thousands, millions, generation after generation. And where does it lead? Into walls they never saw coming, into storms they never prepared for, into situations they thought they were smart enough to avoid. Ego does not shout. Ego does not argue. Ego assumes. And that assumption is the poison that begins the downfall. The illusion of control. Most people feel they are in control of their time, their decisions, their careers, their relationships. But ego creates illusions.
illusions that feel like truth. Think of the last time you refused feedback, or avoided learning something new because it made you uncomfortable, or dismissed someone's advice simply because you didn't want to appear inexperienced. Ego hates humility. Ego hates vulnerability. Ego hates anything that threatens the image we have created of ourselves. And so it keeps you locked away from learning, locked away from growth, locked away from truth. A person can be brilliant, talented, gifted, but if ego leads them, the destination is always the same: self-inflicted collapse. The three masks of ego. To understand the enemy, you must understand its disguises, because ego does not come with warnings. It appears as confidence, as ambition, as self-belief, and sometimes as pain disguised as pride. Ego wears many masks, but the three most dangerous are: 1. The mask of superiority. This is the voice that says, "I am better than others. I don't need to learn from anyone. I don't need to listen." It traps you in the illusion of perfection, a deadly place where improvement becomes impossible. 2. The mask of certainty. This one whispers, "I already know what I need to know. I don't make mistakes. My way is the right way." This mask blinds you, not to the world, but to yourself. 3. The mask of hurt pride. This is the most subtle mask. It forms when someone corrects you, when life humbles you, when circumstances remind you that you are human. Instead of learning, ego flares up. How dare they? Who are they to tell me? I don't deserve this. This mask prevents healing, growth, and transformation. When these three masks fuse together, ego becomes a fortress, and you become trapped inside. The cost of unchecked ego. Let me tell you a truth many never learn until it is too late. You cannot grow if you think you already have everything. You cannot learn if you think you already know everything. You cannot change if you think you don't need change. Ego prevents apologies. Ego ruins relationships. Ego destroys potential. Ego blinds leaders. Ego silences talent. Ego turns confidence into arrogance, ambition into obsession, self-belief into delusion. Think of every great downfall throughout history: emperors, kings, politicians, athletes, innovators, CEOs, celebrities. Was the world their enemy? No. Their downfall came from within, from the echo chamber of their own ego, from the voice telling them they were untouchable. When a person stops questioning themselves, stops challenging themselves, stops listening, they begin walking toward a cliff with full confidence and zero awareness. Ego pushes. Gravity does the rest. The first step toward victory. To defeat an enemy, you must first see it clearly. Not hide from it, not deny it, not excuse it, but confront it. And here is the paradox. Ego is only dangerous when it is invisible. The moment you see it, the moment you name it, its power begins to crumble. Awareness becomes your sword. Humility becomes your shield. Discipline becomes your armor. This chapter is not about eliminating ego completely. That is impossible. Every human carries it. But it is about mastering it, recognizing when it speaks, understanding when it distorts your thinking, and choosing truth over comfort. Because comfort is ego's nourishment, and truth is its starvation. the mirror you cannot escape. There is a mirror each of us must look into, a mirror that does not reflect your face, but your intentions, your actions, your motivations. In that mirror, your ego becomes visible, and what you see may not be pleasant, but it will be real. And reality is the beginning of greatness. As you stand on the edge of this journey, you must ask yourself, am I ready to see what lies within? Am I brave enough to confront the enemy that follows me everywhere? Because this enemy does not live in shadows. It lives in your choices, your reactions, your beliefs, your sense of self. And once you conquer it, the world becomes conquerable. But what happens when ego doesn't just sabotage your thoughts, but begins attacking your success? When every achievement becomes a breeding ground for blind confidence, and every victory becomes the beginning of a downfall you never saw coming, the answer lies ahead.
Chapter 2. The Trap of Early Success. What if your very first victory is also the first step toward your downfall? And what if the applause you crave is secretly building the cage that will one day trap you? Success. Such a beautiful word. So bright, so warm, so full of promise. When it arrives, even in small amounts, even for a brief moment, it feels like the world has finally aligned with your dreams. But beneath that warmth lies a danger almost no one sees coming. Early success is not just a blessing. It can be a seduction, a subtle, addictive whisper that tells you, you did it, you're different, you're special, you don't need to try as hard anymore. And that is the beginning of ego's most powerful trap. Today's chapter is about that trap, the silent transformation of pure confidence into poisonous pride, and how early success becomes the spark that ignites a lifelong struggle with ego. Let's step inside. The sweet poison of the first win. Every great journey begins with small victories. The first time you succeed at something, whether it's a school achievement, a project, a promotion, a business idea, a piece of art, something changes inside you. You feel capable. You feel powerful. You feel in control. But ego takes that feeling and amplifies it far beyond reality. Instead of, I succeeded, now let me work harder, ego says, I succeeded because I'm naturally better. Instead of, this is just the beginning, ego says, this is enough, I've arrived. Instead of, I should stay humble, ego says, I deserve more praise. The early spark of success becomes the fuel for a flame that burns invisible at first, but grows with every compliment, every yes, every nod, every bit of approval. And suddenly, without noticing, you begin drifting away from discipline, drifting away from learning, drifting away from the small habits that brought you success in the first place. This is how early wins become early weakness. Not because success is wrong, but because ego steals it from you and claims it as its own. The mirage of I have arrived. There is a moment after your first major achievement when the world looks different. Colors feel brighter. Your confidence rises. Your pace changes. But ego takes advantage of that moment and paints a mirage, a false image of who you think you are versus who you actually are. It whispers, you've arrived. You've made it. You're beyond mistakes now. People start saying things like, you're gifted. You're amazing. You're a natural. You were born for this. And slowly, dangerously, you start believing it.
not because it's true, but because it feels so good to believe it. You begin to see yourself as someone who deserves success, not someone who earns it. And that shift, so tiny, so harmless, so innocent, becomes the opening through which ego walks straight into your life. Success without struggle is a weak foundation. Every castle needs a solid foundation. Every tree needs strong roots. Every athlete needs disciplined training. Every artist needs years of practice. Every leader needs humility forged through difficult experiences. But when success comes too early, before the foundation is strong, ego takes the place of discipline. You start relying on talent instead of effort, on recognition instead of consistency, on praise instead of improvement, on momentum instead of mastery. It's like building a mansion on sand. It may stand for a moment, but the first storm will wipe it away. Here is the bitter truth. Early success without struggle can weaken you, because it teaches you the wrong lessons. That success is easy, that effort isn't necessary, that you're better than others, that you can skip the fundamentals, that your current level is enough for the future. Ego cannot survive in environments of discipline and humility. So what does it do? It convinces you that you no longer need them. The hidden danger: validation addiction. There is a moment after early success when the world applauds you. Family, friends, teachers, co-workers, society. And applause feels incredible. But it is also addictive. It creates a craving for external validation, a need for people to notice you, admire you, acknowledge you. Ego feeds on that craving. At first, you simply enjoy the praise. Then you begin expecting it. Then you begin depending on it. And eventually, you begin shaping your entire identity around it. You forget why you started. You forget the love of the craft. You forget the joy of learning. You forget the humility of being a beginner. Because ego tells you, if no one sees it, it doesn't matter. If no one praises you, it's not worth doing. If no one recognizes it, the effort is wasted. This is how early success traps you, not with failure, but with the illusion of worth being tied to applause. And once that mindset takes control, growth becomes impossible. The slow erosion of discipline. Have you ever noticed how hard you work when you're hungry, when you're unknown, when no one expects anything from you? You try harder, you push further, you study more, you sweat more, you focus more. But after early success, something shifts. Suddenly, you feel like you've earned the right to relax, to do less, to slow down. You stop asking questions, stop seeking improvement, stop practicing, stop studying, stop pushing, because you believe success will continue naturally, the same way a river keeps flowing after one day of rain. But discipline is not a river. Discipline is a fire. And if you stop feeding it, it dies silently. And by the time you notice, your edge is gone. This is why so many people peak early, not because they lack talent, but because ego killed their discipline long before their potential could bloom. The curse of overconfidence. Confidence is good. Confidence is necessary. Confidence is a strength. But overconfidence? That is ego dressed as courage. Overconfidence makes you underestimate others. Overconfidence makes you stop preparing. Overconfidence blinds you to danger. Overconfidence makes shortcuts that lead nowhere. Think of every underdog victory you've ever seen in sports, business, or history. The giant doesn't lose because the opponent is stronger. The giant loses because ego whispers, "You don't need to try today. You've already won." Overconfidence turns champions into losers. It turns progress into complacency. It turns talent into wasted potential. The higher you rise, the harder the fall, especially when ego is the one lifting you. The lesson hidden inside early success. So what should we learn? What is the message behind the trap? Here it is. Simple, powerful, unforgettable. Your first success is not a finish line. It is a warning. A warning to stay humble. A warning to keep learning. A warning to protect your discipline. A warning to be grateful, not prideful. A warning to stay curious, stay open, stay grounded. True growth begins after your first success, not before it, not during it, but after it, when ego is at its strongest and humility is most needed. But what happens when success doesn't just shift your confidence, but begins to reshape your identity? When the spotlight becomes a drug and silence becomes unbearable.
Chapter 3. Silence over Spotlight. What if the brightest spotlight in your life is the very thing dimming your future? And what if the silence you keep avoiding is the silence that could save you? Fame doesn't always mean millions of fans or flashing cameras. Sometimes fame is as simple as being noticed, praised, recognized, even by a small group. A little applause, a little attention, a little fame. Even the smallest spotlight feels intoxicating. But ego loves the spotlight more than anything else. It feeds on it, grows with it, becomes powerful because of it. And slowly, without warning, you begin craving it. Not because of what it gives you, but because of what it makes you feel. Seen, important, validated, superior, valuable. Yet here lies the paradox. The spotlight can build you, but it can also blind you. Today's chapter is about escaping that blindness, choosing silence over noise, humility over display, and growth over attention. Let's step into the quiet. The spotlight is not light, it's heat. Imagine standing on a stage. The light hits your face. The crowd watches. Your heart races, not from fear, but from the thrill of being noticed. But the thing about spotlights is this: they don't just illuminate, they heat. Too much attention doesn't just reveal you, it burns you. The more the spotlight follows you, the more you begin shaping your life for the viewers, not for the purpose, not for the craft, not for the mission. You perform instead of progress, pretend instead of improve, show instead of build. And ego whispers, keep shining, keep showing, don't stop now. But growth happens in darkness. Skill grows in quiet hours. Mastery grows when nobody is watching. Silence is the forge. The spotlight is the distraction. The addiction to being seen. There is a moment many people never admit to themselves, a moment when they realize they don't love the work they're doing. They love being seen doing it. Ego confuses the two. It tells you, if no one sees your effort, it doesn't matter. If no one praises you, you're wasting your time. If you're not getting recognition, you're not progressing. But think of the greatest creators, innovators, thinkers, artists, inventors. Their greatest breakthroughs didn't happen in front of crowds. They happened alone, in silence. in notebooks no one ever read, in workshops no one ever visited, in long nights no one ever witnessed. Because the truth is simple. Real growth requires privacy. Ego hates privacy because privacy doesn't feed it, but silence feeds the soul. Noise is ego's favorite mask. Look around the modern world. Noise is everywhere. Notifications, likes, comments, applause, attention. Everyone is performing. Everyone is broadcasting. Everyone is competing for visibility. But ego hides inside that noise. It uses it as a mask that keeps you from seeing your weaknesses. Because if you're always looking at the crowd, you never look in the mirror. If you're always performing for approval, you never check your foundations. Noise protects ego. Silence exposes it. And this is why silence is uncomfortable for so many people. It forces you to face the truth about yourself. The discipline of staying quiet. Staying quiet is not about muting your voice. It's about strengthening your purpose. It's about resisting the temptation to show everything you're working on. About letting results speak, not announcements. About choosing deep work over constant display. Ego wants you to broadcast your efforts, but mastery wants you to protect them. There is power in silence, a power ego cannot understand. Silence means I'm focused, I'm building, I'm working. I'm not here to impress, I'm here to transform. It creates mystery, strength, and clarity. It preserves your energy. It sharpens your mind. It deepens your craft. And most important, silence frees you from the prison of needing approval. The danger of being praised too early. Have you ever noticed how quickly people praise someone for the smallest achievement? You're so talented. You're amazing. You're ahead of everyone. You're the best. And those compliments feel good, almost too good. But early praise is dangerous. It makes you feel like you've already arrived, like your work is complete, like you're already accomplished. But real experts understand something critical. Praise freezes improvement. When people tell you you're great too often, the ego starts believing it, and the hunger to grow fades. The curiosity to learn dies. The willingness to question yourself disappears. Silence keeps you humble. Attention makes you careless. The freedom found in working quietly. There is a freedom that comes from being unnoticed, a peace that comes from working without pressure, a joy that comes from creating without eyes watching. When you work in silence, you become fearless. You experiment without judgment. You fail without embarrassment. You explore without limits. You grow. But when you work in the spotlight, your creativity becomes trapped. You start protecting your image rather than sharpening your craft. You start playing safe instead of taking risks. You start repeating what worked instead of discovering what's possible. Silence liberates you. Spotlights restrict you. Humility is the path to mastery. Every master begins as a student. Every expert once sat quietly, unknown, unnoticed. Every legend had years, sometimes decades, of invisible effort. Humility is not weakness. Humility is the willingness to stay small while you grow strong. It is the courage to say, I don't know enough. I still have so much to learn. I am not bigger than the process. Ego says, I'm already great. Humility says, I will become great, but I must earn it. One voice destroys potential. The other unlocks it.
The wisdom of silence. Silence has a strange magic. In silence, you hear your inner voice clearly. In silence, you understand your true reasons. In silence, you see what needs to be done. The world will always try to pull you into noise, into distraction, into performance, into pride. But greatness grows in the quiet, away from the crowd, away from applause, away from ego. The question is not, are you talented, or are you capable? The real question is, are you willing to work in silence while ego demands the spotlight? Because the person who can stay humble in silence becomes unstoppable in the world. But what happens when silence isn't enough? When ego finds a new disguise? A disguise even more dangerous than praise or spotlight. Next, we step into a world where ego attacks from a place you least expect.
Chapter 4. The Student's Path. What if the greatest strength you can have is to admit you don't know enough? And what if staying teachable is the key that unlocks doors your ego will never allow you to enter? There is a subtle power in being a student, not just in school, not just in training, not just in a formal classroom, but in life itself. A student approaches the world with curiosity, humility, and the willingness to learn. They understand one truth that ego refuses to accept. The journey of growth never ends. The moment you stop learning is the moment ego begins to take control. The path of a student is simple in concept, but difficult in practice. It demands humility, patience, and relentless curiosity. It requires listening more than speaking, observing more than acting, asking questions instead of giving answers. And yet, it is this path, the path that many dismiss as slow or unnecessary, that separates those who grow from those who stagnate. The illusion of mastery. Most people think they are far further along than they actually are. They look at a skill, a career, a talent, and assume, I've got this. I understand it all. This illusion of mastery is ego's favorite playground. It convinces you that learning is optional, that mistakes are weaknesses, that asking for help is a sign of failure, that you are somehow beyond the basics. The truth is that no one is beyond learning. The greatest minds, the most successful leaders, the most legendary artists, they are all lifelong students. Jeff Bezos once said, "The day you stop learning is the day you fail." A student never stops. A student never rests. A student never lets the illusion of knowing rob them of progress. The humility advantage. Being a student requires humility, the recognition that you are small in the grand scheme of things, that the world is vast, and that there is always someone who knows more than you do. Humility is not weakness. It is the armor against ego. It is the lens that allows you to see truth clearly. Humility allows you to listen deeply without interruption, accept criticism without resistance, seek mentors without shame, value feedback over praise. Ego wants attention. Ego wants applause. Ego wants to prove. Humility seeks growth. Humility seeks mastery. Humility seeks truth. And this simple shift from proving to learning is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. Learning from everyone and everything. A student sees lessons in every person, situation, and challenge. The janitor, the intern, the rival, the failure, the setback, all become teachers. No one is beneath them. No lesson is wasted. No observation ignored. Imagine walking into a room and observing, not to judge, but to understand. Listening, not to reply, but to absorb. Failing not to quit, but to learn. This mindset transforms everyday experiences into growth opportunities. And over time, that compounding knowledge becomes invisible power. The ego, on the other hand, ignores this. Ego believes that learning from others diminishes status. Ego fears appearing weak. Ego wants shortcuts, praise, and validation, but it avoids true growth. The student's path is lonely at times. It demands patience when results are slow. It demands resilience when recognition is absent. But it also guarantees one thing: mastery over self and mastery over circumstance. The role of mentors. No student grows alone. A mentor is not someone who gives answers. They are someone who challenges, corrects, and reflects back your flaws. Mentors force you to confront ego. They expose blind spots. They question assumptions. They push you beyond comfort. And a true student listens, not because they have to, not because they are forced to, but because they understand that wisdom cannot be invented. It must be inherited, observed, and internalized. Ego despises mentorship. Ego fears exposure. Ego avoids accountability. But a student embraces guidance as fuel for growth. The student's humility transforms criticism into treasure, setbacks into lessons, and guidance into stepping stones. Curiosity as a weapon. A student approaches life with curiosity. Curiosity is the antidote to complacency. It keeps the mind sharp, the vision expansive, and the ego in check. Ask questions constantly. Why is this the way it is? Could there be a better method? What am I missing here? Curiosity keeps you humble because it reminds you that the world is larger than your assumptions. Curiosity keeps you learning because it forces you to seek beyond your comfort zone. Curiosity keeps ego quiet because the mind is too busy exploring to boast. Without curiosity, a student becomes stagnant. With curiosity, a student becomes unstoppable. Failing as a student. A student understands that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. Each failure is a lesson wrapped in discomfort. Each mistake reveals weakness. Each challenge highlights what remains unmastered. The ego screams, "Failure is shame." The student whispers, "Failure is data." This mindset transforms pain into progress, embarrassment into insight, setbacks into preparation. When you fail as a student, you do not collapse. You analyze, you adjust, you apply, you grow. The ego fears this process. Ego fears accountability. Ego fears humility. The student, however, embraces it with open arms. The lifelong commitment. The path of a student is not temporary. It is not seasonal. It is not a phase to be outgrown. It is a lifelong commitment to listen more than you speak, observe more than you react, learn more than you teach, seek mastery more than validation. This commitment creates resilience, adaptability, and clarity, the exact traits ego cannot manufacture. When you stay on the student's path, your power grows quietly, invisibly, but irreversibly. Ego cannot compete with consistent learning. Ego cannot outlast humility. Ego cannot survive curiosity. And the world, eventually, bends toward those who keep learning when no one is watching. But what happens when the student is tested? Not by books, mentors, or teachers, but by the harshest teacher of all, life itself. When circumstances challenge every lesson learned, every skill acquired, and every ounce of patience, will humility still prevail, or will ego finally strike back with full force?
Chapter 5. The Weight of Entitlement. What if the thing holding you back isn't your lack of talent, but the belief that you already deserve success? And what if entitlement is silently destroying the destiny you were meant to build? Entitlement is a quiet poison. It doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It settles inside the mind like smoke in a closed room, slow, suffocating, unnoticed until you can no longer breathe clearly. Most people don't realize when entitlement begins taking root. It feels innocent at first. I worked hard. I suffered. I deserve more than this. But entitlement is never about what you've earned. It's about what you think the world owes you. And the world owes you nothing. Not success, not opportunity, not applause, not comfort, not fairness. This is the harsh, undeniable truth that ego tries desperately to avoid. The birth of entitlement. Entitlement grows from a single seed, expectation. You expect people to value you. You expect success to arrive quickly. You expect recognition because you tried. You expect rewards simply for showing up. But life doesn't work that way. Effort does not guarantee outcome. Desire does not guarantee reward. Ambition does not guarantee achievement. Entitlement is the emotional shortcut people take to avoid the responsibility of discipline, patience, and humility. It becomes a shield against failure, because if you believe you deserve success, then the world, not you, becomes the problem when things don't go your way. That is how ego wins. That is how ambition dies. That is how greatness fades. Entitlement in success. There are two dangerous stages in life. When you have nothing, when you finally have something. The second stage is where entitlement grows fastest. Success, even small success, invites ego to whisper, "You earned this. You deserve more than this. You're above the basics now." But the moment you start believing that success is owed to you simply because you succeeded once, you begin to lose everything that got you there in the first place. Work ethic softens. Curiosity drops. Humility fades. Patience erodes. And soon, ambition turns into arrogance. Success is not a destination. It is a responsibility. And responsibility requires humility. Entitlement in failure. Strangely, entitlement grows even in failure, especially in failure. People fall, struggle, or suffer, then feel the world should compensate them. I've been through so much. I deserve better now. I failed, but it wasn't my fault. Someone else is getting what should have been mine. This mindset traps people in helplessness. Instead of learning, they blame. Instead of adapting, they wait. Instead of trying again, they expect life to reward their pain. Failure is painful, yes, but pain does not entitle you to success. Pain teaches, shapes, sharpens, but it does not guarantee reward. Only humility does that. Only discipline does that. Only persistent effort does that. How entitlement destroys potential. Entitlement is dangerous because it replaces action with expectation. Instead of working, you wait. Instead of improving, you justify. Instead of adapting, you complain. Instead of growing, you demand. Entitlement kills potential because it blinds you to reality. When you believe you already deserve what you want, you stop doing what is required to earn it. You stop pushing. You stop learning. You stop sacrificing. You stop evolving. And slowly, silently, your potential dies. Not because you weren't capable, but because you believed the world should hand you what you were supposed to build with your own hands. The antidote? Responsibility. The opposite of entitlement is responsibility. Not blame, not guilt, not punishment. Responsibility is ownership. Ownership of your choices. Ownership of your actions. Ownership of your results. Responsibility says, it is on me. The wins and the losses. The progress and the setbacks. The discipline and the distractions. The effort and the outcome. This mindset frees you from the illusion that life owes you something. Once you stop expecting, you start creating. Once you stop demanding, you start earning. Once you stop waiting, you start moving. Responsibility leads to mastery. Entitlement leads nowhere. The humbling of great individuals. History is filled with people who lost everything because entitlement blinded them. Athletes who stopped training because they believed talent was enough. Leaders who refused feedback because they believed they were always right. Artists who demanded recognition without improving their craft. Entrepreneurs who assumed success would continue just because they succeeded once. Each one of them fell, and their downfall began at the moment they believed they deserved something more than the work they were willing to do. Greatness demands humility at every stage. Success demands constant earning. Progress demands daily effort. No one, no matter how skilled, talented, or gifted, is immune to the consequences of entitlement. Living without entitlement. To eliminate entitlement, ask yourself, what do I believe the world owes me? What am I waiting for instead of working for? What expectations are stopping me from taking responsibility? Then destroy the answers. Break them. Replace them. Replace expectation with effort. Replace entitlement with discipline. Replace frustration with strategy. Replace complaints with action. A person without entitlement becomes unstoppable because they are never waiting for the world. They are always moving toward what they want. Every success becomes a bonus, not a guarantee. Every failure becomes a lesson, not an injustice. Every challenge becomes an opportunity, not an insult. That is the mindset of someone truly free. But what happens when someone believes the world owes them everything? Attention, recognition, achievement, even before they've earned anything at all. When entitlement reaches its peak, ego begins its most dangerous phase yet, a phase where success becomes impossible unless one crucial shift is made.
Chapter 6: Mastery Without Applause. What if the most powerful work you will ever do is the work no one sees? And what if true mastery is built not in the spotlight, but in the silence where ego cannot survive? There is a moment in every journey where the world becomes quiet. No applause, no encouragement, no recognition, no one watching. Just you and the work. This is the stage most people fear, because without validation, ego feels starved. Without praise, ego feels invisible. Without attention, ego feels powerless. But this silence, this empty, echoing, unseen space is sacred. This is where mastery is born. The world celebrates the final outcome, but mastery is forged in private, in long nights, in slow progress, in the discipline that no one else witnesses. This chapter takes you deep into that space, the hidden world where greatness is shaped long before anyone notices. The invisible hours. Mastery is not created in moments of attention. It is crafted in the invisible hours. Hours when no one is cheering, hours when no one is impressed, hours when no one even knows what you're doing. These hours test the purity of your intention. Are you doing the work because you love the craft, or because you want others to admire you for doing it? The ego works for applause. The master works for improvement. People often ask, how did they get so good? The answer is always the same. They worked in silence, again and again, long after ego grew bored and gave up. The death of distractions. When you chase attention, you become distracted. When you chase mastery, you become dangerous. Attention fragments your focus. You begin thinking about your image, reputation, status, and how others perceive your effort. But mastery requires commitment when no one is watching, discipline long after the excitement fades, focus without external reward, and patience without visible progress. The ego wants shortcuts. Mastery demands repetition. It demands the boring work, the quiet work, the unglamorous work. It demands that you show up when no one else does. The inner craftsmanship. Every great artist, athlete, writer, musician, engineer, or thinker has one thing in common. They spent thousands of hours honing their craft before the world ever saw their brilliance. Michael Jordan practiced more alone than he ever played in public. Picasso worked on tens of thousands of sketches most people will never see. Da Vinci filled notebooks with experiments no one admired until centuries later. Writers draft chapters that will never be published. Musicians rehearse notes that will never reach an audience. Greatness is not built on talent alone. It is built on craftsmanship. Craftsmanship is the willingness to go deeper than necessary, to refine beyond what others expect, to repeat a process until excellence is no longer an accident but a habit. The ego resists craftsmanship because it is slow, but mastery thrives on it. The discipline of showing up. There comes a time when motivation fades, excitement fades, energy fades, but the master still shows up. Not because they feel like it, not because they are inspired, not because someone is watching, but because showing up is who they have become. Discipline replaces ego. Consistency replaces chaos. Patience replaces pride. The world sees the final performance, but not the 10,000 rehearsals that built it. This is why mastery is rare, not because people lack talent, but because they quit in the quiet stage where progress is slow and lonely. Mastery versus recognition. There is a dangerous confusion many people fall into. They assume that mastery and recognition are the same, but they are not. Recognition is external. Mastery is internal. Recognition makes you noticeable. Mastery makes you unbeatable. Recognition can be taken away.
Mastery cannot. Recognition depends on the world. Mastery depends on you. The ego seeks recognition. The master seeks depth. And depth is something that cannot be faked, rushed, or avoided. It must be earned, layer by layer, through deliberate and conscious effort. The painful beauty of being unseen. There is a unique freedom in doing great work without anyone knowing it. Because when no one is watching, there is no pressure to impress, no expectations, no comparison, no fear of judgment. Just pure creation, just pure growth, just pure struggle, just pure improvement. This purity sharpens you in ways applause never can. Being unseen is not a punishment. It is preparation. It is where you learn to depend on yourself, not on validation, approval, or external energy. The ego collapses in silence. The soul grows there. Quiet progress, loud results. Here's the paradox. The more you focus on mastery, the more recognition eventually comes. Because mastery is magnetic. Excellence is impossible to ignore. Consistency creates momentum that becomes visible over time. But by the time recognition arrives, the master no longer needs it. They have become so committed to the process that the praise feels small compared to the work itself. This is the state ego fears most, a life where external approval is irrelevant and internal mastery is everything. This is true freedom. Mastery as a lifelong path. Mastery is not a destination. It is a lifelong journey. It requires constant refinement, constant humility, constant improvement. You never arrive. You only grow and grow and grow. This endlessness is not a curse. It is a gift, because as long as there is more to learn, you will never stop becoming better than you were yesterday. But what happens when life suddenly disrupts your quiet pursuit of mastery? When challenges strike, pressure increases, and the world puts you to the test, not privately, but publicly. When the storm hits and everything you've built in silence is now on the line, will mastery be enough to survive the chaos that ego is about to unleash?
Chapter 7. When Life Punches Back. What happens when life hits you harder than you ever expected, shattering the silence you worked so hard to build? And what if the true test of your strength isn't how you rise, but how you survive the fall? Life does not knock gently. It does not warn you before it strikes. It does not pause to consider how prepared you are. It simply hits. Sometimes slowly, through disappointments that accumulate grain by grain. Sometimes suddenly, through a moment that knocks the air out of your chest. Sometimes unfairly, through a setback that seems to come from nowhere. But it hits. It always hits. This chapter explores the truth most people avoid. No matter how focused, disciplined, or prepared you are, pressure will find you. Failure will confront you. The world will test you. And ego, fragile, loud, insecure ego, cannot survive that test. But you can, if you learn how to respond when life punches back. The collapse of ego under pressure. Ego thrives when things are going well. It loves victories. It feeds on progress. It grows fat on praise. But ego cannot withstand hardship. The moment things go wrong, ego panics.
Why is this happening to me? I deserved better. This isn't fair. Someone else is to blame. Ego turns setbacks into insults. It turns problems into personal attacks. It turns challenges into excuses. When life punches back, ego collapses. It has no resilience, no structure, no strength. Because ego is built on illusion, and illusions crumble the moment reality pushes against them. But you are not ego. You are something deeper, stronger, more grounded. You are someone capable of absorbing the hit and rising stronger. Pain is not proof of failure. Pain is proof of growth. Every strong person has a story filled with moments when the world hit them harder than they expected. They did not become strong after the pain. They became strong because of the pain. A boxer does not grow skilled by avoiding punches. A climber does not develop strength by choosing flat ground. A leader does not become wise by walking only easy paths. The hits shape you. The pressure molds you. The struggle forms you. It is only ego that interprets pain as injustice. The wise know pain is instruction. The temptation to break. When life punches you, there is a moment, a single fragile moment, when you consider giving up. It whispers in your mind like a poison. It's too hard. Maybe you're not good enough. Why keep going? Just stop. This temptation is natural. It is human. It is universal. But it is also the very moment that defines destiny. Not when you win, not when you reach the goal, not when people clap. Your destiny is defined in the moment when you decide whether to break or bend. Ego breaks. The humble bend and keep moving. Facing setbacks with clarity. When challenges strike, clarity is your weapon. Ask yourself 3 powerful questions. What is the situation trying to teach me? Every setback contains a hidden instruction. Ego prevents you from seeing it. Humility reveals it. What can I control right now? You cannot control outcomes, people, luck, or timing, but you can control effort, reaction, discipline, and focus. And what small step can I take next? When everything feels overwhelming, shrink the problem. One step. Just one step. And then another. This is how resilience is built. Not through emotion, but through clarity. The rise after the fall. Resilience is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to rise with the pain. It means standing up even while shaking. It means continuing forward even while hurting. It means believing in tomorrow even when today is collapsing. Rising does not require perfection. It requires intention. The willingness to refuse defeat, even when defeat seems easier. You grow stronger not by avoiding hardship, but by surviving it. And each time you rise, your confidence comes not from ego, but from proof. Proof that you can survive. Proof that you can overcome. Proof that you can adapt. That kind of confidence cannot be shaken. It cannot be threatened. It cannot be taken away, because it is earned. The power of endurance. Anyone can work hard when things are easy. Anyone can stay focused when life is kind. Anyone can feel confident when results come quickly. But very few endure when nothing makes sense, when progress is invisible, when the world feels heavy, when the future
feels uncertain. Endurance is not glamorous. It is not exciting. It is not celebrated. But endurance is what separates the unstoppable from the ordinary. The truth is simple. You don't need to move fast. You just need to keep moving. A slow climb is still a climb. A small step is still a step. Forward is forward. When everything falls apart, at some point life will hit so hard that everything feels like it's falling apart. A relationship ends. A dream fails. A business collapses. A plan dissolves. A friendship breaks. A season ends before you are ready. In these moments, ego wants to scream, burn everything, and blame the universe. But these moments often become the beginning of your greatest evolution. Not because the pain is good, not because the suffering is noble, but because these moments strip away everything unnecessary, leaving you with only what truly matters: strength, humility, clarity, patience, purpose. When everything else is gone, these are the things that remain. And from these, you rebuild. Transformation through hardship. The world's greatest transformations come from hardship. A person discovers their purpose after losing everything. A leader rises after a brutal failure. A creator breaks through after years of struggle. A warrior emerges after being tested by life's hardest battles. Hardship is not the end, but the doorway to a new beginning. You rebuild differently after life punches you. You rebuild with intention, wisdom, and humility. You rebuild with deeper understanding and higher awareness. And most importantly, you rebuild with the knowledge that you are stronger than you thought and more resilient than ego ever allowed you to believe. But now, a bigger challenge arrives. Not just a setback, but a moment where your purpose itself is questioned. When everything you've been working towards seems uncertain and ego tempts you to abandon the path entirely, what will you choose? Will you follow the mission or follow the fear?
Chapter 8. The Mirror of Reality. What if the greatest danger in your life is not what you see, but what you refuse to see? And what if the ego quietly edits reality until you're living inside an illusion you mistake for truth? Human beings have many fears: failure, rejection, loss, uncertainty. But there is one fear so subtle, so universal, and so deeply embedded in the human mind that most people don't even realize they're terrified of it. The fear of seeing themselves clearly. To look directly at your own weakness. To admit your limitations. To acknowledge your faults. To confront your illusions. This is one of the bravest acts any human can ever perform. Because ego hates honesty. Ego hates clarity. Ego hates reality. Ego survives only when the truth is blurry, distorted, or ignored. And so this chapter becomes one of the most crucial turning points in our journey. Learning how to stand in front of the mirror of reality and not look away. Why ego distorts reality. Ego has one job: to protect the image we have of ourselves. Not who we actually are, but who we wish we were. So ego bends the truth. Ego filters information. Ego exaggerates victories and hides mistakes. Ego blames others and shields itself from accountability. It builds a fake world where we are always right, we are always talented, we are always deserving,
We are always innocent, and everyone else is the problem. But a life built on illusions becomes a trap, because you cannot fix what you refuse to see. You cannot improve what you deny. You cannot grow while living inside a lie. Reality is not our enemy. It is our teacher. And the moment we stop editing reality, we start evolving. Reality is the hardest teacher and the fairest. Reality doesn't care about your ego. Reality doesn't care about your feelings. Reality doesn't care about your dreams or fantasies. Reality simply is. It tells you exactly where you stand. It reveals what is working and what is not. It shows you your strengths and your weaknesses. It exposes your blind spots. And if you listen, really listen, it guides you toward growth far faster than flattery, praise, or self-deception ever can. Reality may seem harsh, but it is also the only place where true progress is possible. Those who embrace reality rise. Those who avoid it stay stuck. The courage to look in the mirror. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that shows not your face, but your character. It shows your fears, your habits, your patterns, your excuses, your ego, your potential, your truth. How many people would dare to look? Most people prefer a comforting lie over a painful truth. But the great ones, the masters, the innovators, the artists, the thinkers, the entrepreneurs, they grow because they do the thing others avoid. They seek the truth even when the truth hurts. They ask themselves hard questions. What am I pretending not to see? What mistakes am I repeating? Where am I lying to myself? What weaknesses am I avoiding? What reality am I refusing to accept? Honesty with oneself is the beginning of transformation. The enemy of reality is comfort. Ego loves comfort. Comfort in old beliefs, comfort in old habits, comfort in old stories, comfort in self-delusion, because comfort protects ego. Reality destroys comfort. Reality forces us to change. Reality demands accountability. Reality exposes our illusions. Reality challenges our identity. This is why most people stay where they are, not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack courage, the courage to face the discomfort of truth. Growth begins where comfort ends. Seeing failure without ego's distortion. When failure happens, ego panics. It tries to rewrite what happened. It blames others. It changes the story. It protects its image. It rejects responsibility. But every time ego hides the truth, we lose a chance to learn. Failure itself is not the enemy. Refusing to learn from failure is. The most successful people in history share one simple trait. When they fail, they tell themselves the truth. Not excuses, not stories, not dramatized narratives, just the truth. And because of that, they improve faster than everyone else. Failure plus honesty equals growth. Failure plus ego equals repetition. Which one do you choose? The discipline of feedback. One of ego's biggest fears? Feedback. Why? Because feedback is reality delivered through another person. When someone tells you, here's what you could improve, here's where you slipped, here's what you're missing, ego feels attacked. Ego feels threatened. Ego feels exposed. But the wise person sees feedback as a gift, a mirror they cannot see alone, a perspective they cannot produce themselves, a compass pointing toward truth. A strong person asks for feedback. A stronger person listens to it. The strongest person adapts because of it. Ego blocks improvement. Reality invites it. Living a life aligned with truth. A life built on truth has a different energy, lighter, sharper, more focused. You move with clarity. You act with confidence. You make decisions without second guessing. You grow without the weight of delusion. Reality becomes a partner, not a threat. You begin to ask, what is actually happening? What is this moment trying to teach me? What truth am I ignoring? What change is required of me now? These questions lead to breakthroughs. The truth is not your enemy. It is your guide. The power of radical self-honesty. There is a moment in every person's life when they feel the ground shift, a moment when they stop lying to themselves. This is the beginning of true maturity. This is the beginning of true strength. This is the beginning of real greatness. You cannot control the world. You cannot control outcomes. You cannot control people. But you can control one thing completely: your relationship with truth. And when that relationship is strong, everything else begins to fall into place. Because in the very next chapter, something even more shocking is revealed, a realization that will challenge your beliefs about effort, success, and your place in the world. A truth the ego tries desperately to hide. Are you ready to uncover it?
Chapter 9. The Discipline of Restraint. What if the real strength you seek isn't found in action, but in the power to pause? And what if the battles you lose are not lost to others, but to your own impulses? The world celebrates action. It rewards speed, aggression, boldness, decisiveness. We are taught from childhood that doing is winning, pushing is progress, and movement is mastery. But there's a hidden skill, older than war, deeper than strategy, and more powerful than force, a skill that only the greatest leaders, thinkers, and creators ever learn. Restraint. The ability to pause when ego demands reaction. The ability to hold back when impulse urges forward. The ability to think when emotion screams to strike. Restraint is not weakness. Restraint is not inaction. Restraint is not fear. Restraint is mastery. Ego hates restraint. Ego wants one thing: instant gratification. Immediate victory, immediate response, immediate recognition, immediate dominance. Ego when criticized, fire back. Ego when threatened, attack first. Ego when challenged, prove them wrong, now. Ego when uncomfortable, escape, distract, react. It thrives in speed. It operates in impulses. It survives through emotional reaction. Restraint destroys ego's favorite weapon: recklessness. The moment you pause, the moment you breathe, the moment you hold your ground instead of exploding, ego begins to lose control. That's why restraint is so rare and so powerful. Strength is the ability to hold the sword
and not swing it. History is full of conquerors who could kill, but the world remembers only those who chose peace when war was easier. Philosophers who had the power to destroy their enemies, but instead challenged themselves. Leaders who could punish their critics, but instead used criticism as wisdom. Restraint is the difference between a child and a king, between an amateur and a master, between ego-driven chaos and wisdom-driven power. Anyone can react. Only the strong can restrain. The art of not taking the bait. Every day, life throws bait at you. A rude comment, a disrespectful message, an insult, a rejection, a challenge, a provocation, an opportunity that looks exciting but is actually a trap. Ego jumps at every bait. It cannot help itself. It must respond. It must defend. It must fight. It must be right. And every time ego reacts, it becomes weaker. But restraint gives you a pause, long enough to ask, is this worth my energy? Is this worth my peace? Is this bait trying to pull me into ego's game? What do I lose by reacting? What do I gain by waiting? That single moment of awareness transforms everything. Most problems in life are not solved by reaction. They are solved by not feeding the fire in the first place. Restraint turns chaos into strategy. When ego reacts, it creates chaos. When restraint leads, it creates clarity. Imagine two generals in battle. One rushes after every movement of the enemy, every noise, every shift, every distraction. He cannot resist acting. He cannot tolerate waiting. He cannot hold back. The other general waits, observes, listens, studies the pattern, understands the terrain, identifies the trap, prepares the right moment. Who wins? Not the chaotic, not the emotional, not the reactive. Victory belongs to the one who knows when not to act. Restraint is intelligence in its purest form. The ego's fear of silence. Silence is a battlefield. Most people cannot handle silence because silence reveals truth. It exposes insecurity. It unmasks weakness. It forces reflection. It gives space for thoughts ego doesn't want to face. That is why ego hates silence. It tries to fill silence with noise, distraction, reaction, drama, arguments, and endless mental chatter. But silence is where wisdom lives. Silence is where restraint grows. Silence is where power gathers before being released. If ego's favorite weapon is noise, restraint's greatest strength is stillness. The discipline of waiting. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not everything needs your energy. Not every situation requires your words. Sometimes restraint looks like walking away from pointless arguments, ignoring someone whose only goal is to trigger you, choosing focus over drama, choosing patience over panic, choosing strategy over impulse. Sometimes the smartest action is no action. Sometimes the strongest move is no move. Waiting is not weakness. Waiting is wisdom sharpening its blade. The samurai have a saying, if you cannot control yourself, you will control nothing. Restraint is self-control in its highest form. Why the ego fears delayed gratification? Ego wants the reward now, the attention now, the victory now, the relief now. But greatness requires delayed gratification. Training before results, learning before mastery, practice before praise, preparation before opportunity, patience before breakthrough. Restraint teaches you to endure the waiting without letting ego panic. It tells you, stay focused, stay disciplined, stay calm. Your time will come. This is the mindset of creators, entrepreneurs, warriors, artists, athletes, anyone who builds something meaningful. Ego crumbles under delay. Restraint strengthens during delay. The power of holding back your words. Words are weapons. Ego uses them carelessly. Restraint uses them surgically. A single reckless sentence can damage a relationship. A single emotional response can ruin a reputation. A single impulsive reaction can cause a decade's worth of consequences. The wise person does not speak to release emotion. They speak to reveal truth. They do not speak to attack, they speak to elevate. Mastery is not in the volume of speech, but in the precision of silence. Restraint protects your energy. Your life has a limited supply of focus, willpower, creativity, and emotional capacity. But ego spends energy like water. It wastes it on proving, reacting, arguing, overthinking, revenge, comparison, fear, anger. Restraint saves energy. It protects your inner world. It guards your peace. Restraint says, not everything deserves access to my energy. And this is one of the greatest freedoms a person can ever earn. The spiritual layer. Restraint makes space for wisdom. In every ancient culture, Stoic, Islamic, Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist, restraint is seen not as a weakness, but as sacred strength. It is the discipline of thinking before acting, listening before responding, observing before judging, preparing before moving, understanding before deciding. Ego rushes, wisdom waits. The pause is divine. The pause is powerful. The pause is where transformation begins. Because in the next chapter, we confront something even more dangerous than impulse, a silent enemy that hides inside success, inside failure, and inside every goal you chase. A force that can destroy everything you've built without you even noticing. Are you prepared to face it?
Chapter 10. The Seduction of Success. What if the moment you taste success is also the moment you become most vulnerable? And what if the victory you celebrate today quietly plants the seed of tomorrow's downfall? Success looks harmless. It looks like a reward, a blessing, the finish line you've been working toward. It looks like the moment you can finally relax, finally breathe, finally feel safe. But beneath its golden glow lies a hidden danger, a danger more subtle than failure, more seductive than flattery, and more destructive than defeat. The danger is what success does to your mind. Because success whispers lies, soft lies, sweet lies, comfortable lies. You did it. You're special. You're different now. You don't need to try as hard. You've earned the right to slow down. You're smarter than the others. And if ego is the enemy, success is ego's favorite weapon. Why success is more dangerous than failure. Failure humbles you. Success inflates you. Failure makes you question yourself. Success makes you stop questioning altogether. Failure forces you to learn. Success convinces you that you already know enough. This is why success ruins more people than failure ever could.
because failure hurts the ego. Success feeds it. And when ego is fed, it grows. And when ego grows, blindness begins. The person who once worked with hunger becomes comfortable. The person who once listened becomes dismissive. The person who once observed becomes overconfident. The person who once learned becomes arrogant. Success changes your external life instantly, but it changes your internal life slowly, dangerously slowly. You don't notice it happening until the damage has already been done. The comfort trap. Before success, you were sharp, focused, driven, disciplined. After success, comfort creeps in, quietly, politely, gently. Comfort says, you've earned a break. You don't have to push anymore. Just enjoy it. Relax. You deserve it. There is nothing wrong with resting, but there is something very wrong with losing hunger. Ryan Holiday calls this the seduction of success. It pulls you in slowly, like gravity, until you no longer remember what effort felt like. Comfort is the invisible killer of potential. It weakens the mind. It softens the discipline. It dulls the ambition. Before success, the mountain looked tall. After success, the mountain looks conquered. And that illusion keeps you from climbing higher. Success creates an illusion of certainty. Success convinces you that you know the right path. Your strategy worked. Your decisions were perfect. Your thinking is flawless. Your instincts are superior. But reality is different. Most success is a mixture of skill, timing, environment, help from others, and luck. Ego takes total credit. Humility understands the full picture. Success blinds you to the complexity that created your win. You begin to believe the illusion, I am the reason for everything. And that illusion leads to disastrous decisions, because decisions made from ego always backfire, even if it takes time. Success attracts the wrong voices. Before success, almost no one cares what you're doing. After success, everyone has an opinion. Some want your approval. Some want your attention. Some want your validation. Some want your energy. Some want your downfall. Ego loves this. It feeds on praise and attention. But praise is dangerous. Praise creates delusion. Praise makes you dependent on applause instead of discipline. Praise makes you chase validation instead of mastery. The more successful you become, the more careful you must be, because the world will try to inflate you, and ego will happily agree. Only humility can protect you from the people who celebrate you too much. The echo of entitlement. Success brings a quiet poison, entitlement. It starts small. I should be treated better. I deserve special attention. I shouldn't have to do that anymore. That rule doesn't apply to me. People should respect me automatically. This mindset destroys careers. It destroys reputations. It destroys potential. Entitlement turns winners into tyrants, geniuses into fools, builders into destroyers. The great ones, the ones who endure, stay grounded. No matter how high they rise, they keep the humility of a beginner. The importance of remaining a student. Success often tricks people into graduating from learning. They stop reading, stop asking questions, stop seeking advice, stop listening, stop growing. Why? Because ego whispers, you already know enough. But mastery belongs to those who remain students forever. A beginner works with curiosity. A master works with curiosity. The moment curiosity dies,
growth dies. The person who rises is the one who stays teachable. Success doesn't mean you've reached the top. Success means you now have access to the next level of learning. Success requires the same focus that created it. What people forget is this: the same discipline that helped you rise is required to help you stay risen. The same humility that helped you learn is required to help you continue learning. The same patience that built your foundation is required to strengthen it. Success is not a reward. Success is a responsibility. The moment you treat success like a finish line, you begin your slow decline. The moment you treat success like the beginning of a harder climb, you transform into someone unstoppable. Ego says, "I made it." Humility says, "There's more to do." This is the great divide. People who listen to ego plateau. People who listen to humility evolve. Ego makes you admire your past achievements. Humility makes you focus on your future potential. Ego wants to protect your image. Humility wants to protect your growth. Ego wants applause. Humility wants mastery. Success is not the enemy. Success infected by ego is. Checking yourself in moments of victory. When you win, you must ask yourself, am I becoming careless? Am I becoming arrogant? Am I listening less? Am I slacking where I used to push? Am I losing the discipline that built me? If the answer to any of these is yes, ego has begun its work. But the good news is, awareness breaks illusion. The moment you see ego rising, you can correct your path. Success is only dangerous when you stop paying attention. Because in the next chapter, we confront one of the most surprising truths in the entire journey, a truth that challenges everything you think you know about greatness, a truth that ego fears more than anything else. Are you sure you're ready for it?
Chapter 11. The Whisper of Humility. What if the quietest voice inside you is the one that saves you? And what if the only way to rise again is to first kneel before the truth? When life hits hard, ego reacts with denial. It refuses to accept responsibility. It blames, excuses, defends, and hides. But humility, the opposite of ego, is what allows transformation to begin. Ryan Holiday explains that failure itself is never permanent. What makes it permanent is the ego that refuses to learn from it. When a person falls, the only way to get up is to first admit, I don't know everything. I need to improve. I need help. Humility is not weakness. It is clarity. It is the reset button of the mind. It is the one thing that turns embarrassment into education and setbacks into strength. The people who come back strongest after failure are not the smartest. They are the most honest with themselves. They see their mistakes clearly. They ask hard questions. They accept correction. They rebuild. Slowly, steadily, silently. This chapter teaches that humility is not something to practice only during defeat. It is a lifelong discipline. Even in success, humility keeps us stable. Even in failure, it keeps us hopeful. Because humility whispers what ego never will. You can begin again.
Final chapter, chapter 12. The final victory when ego finally falls silent. What if the greatest battle you will ever fight is the one inside your own mind? And what if true victory comes not from conquering the world,
but from conquering yourself. There comes a moment in every life when the noise stops. The world becomes quiet. The applause fades. The failures blur. The opinions of people, once so loud, lose their power. In that silence, something profound appears. The realization that ego has been the enemy all along. Throughout this journey, we have seen ego in every stage, before success, during success, and after failure. We have seen how it distorts our vision, blinds us to reality, and traps us in illusions. We have seen how it disguises itself as confidence, ambition, and pride. We have seen how it whispers, "You are everything," only to abandon us when life tests us. But this final chapter is about something else. Not ego, not the enemy. It is about who you become once ego loses its control. The quiet power of being a student. When ego finally steps aside, you begin to learn again. You listen without defensiveness. You accept feedback without fear. You grow without resistance. You realize that mastery is not a destination, it is a lifestyle. The greatest people you admire are not great because they have loud egos. They are great because they remain eternal students. The freedom of humility. Humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking about yourself less. It gives you freedom from comparison, freedom from constant self-judgment, freedom from needing validation, freedom from the exhausting pressure of image. This freedom is the real treasure at the end of the road. The return to purpose. When ego is removed, what remains is your truth, not what people expect from you, not what society tells you to be, just your real purpose. You begin to pursue work that matters. You choose relationships that bring peace. You invest in actions that build meaning, not vanity. You discover that the world is not a battlefield, it is a classroom, and the real victory is not winning against others, but winning against your own ego. The final lesson. If ego is the enemy, then awareness is the weapon. Every day, ego tries to return. Through pride, through insecurity, through comparison, through self-obsession. But now you know how to defeat it, with humility, purpose, discipline, and truth. This is the victory that cannot be taken away. This is the triumph that echoes forever. As the journey ends, imagine standing at the edge of a quiet horizon. The storms of ego are behind you. The path ahead is clear. You walk forward lighter, wiser, calmer, not because the world changed, but because you did. This is not just the end of a book. It is the beginning of a new life. A life lived without ego, without illusions, without limits. A life where you rise not through pride, but through purpose. Where you grow not to impress, but to become whole. And as you close this audiobook, remember, the real enemy was never the world. It was the ego inside. And now, you have finally defeated it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for growing. Thank you for completing this journey.